I want to quit my job and go full time. Most of the people that think they need a prototype company don't. Getting your product 3D printed in China is probably not that much cheaper. And what people generally need this for is, if you're looking for a prototype in China, the first question that you have to ask yourself is why? I'm going to tell you in this video why that's so important. And then I'm going to follow that up by giving you 3 different tips or ideas, techniques to make sure that you get the prototype that you need. All right, so first, why, right? Why do you want to make a prototype in China? The reason I ask that, so broadly, a little bit mysterious why, is because most of the people that think they need a prototype company don't. Right? People think, I want to make a product. I have this new idea. I want to make a business out of it. I want to quit my job and go full time and tackle this dream. The reality is that prototype isn't really the first step, right? The first step is to design and to develop your product. And that is not what prototype factories do. Typically, what a prototype factory will consist of, some engineers, sure, but for the most part, it's going to be either 3D printing or CNC machines. And what people generally need this for is, engineers that really know their stuff, Fortune 500 companies, entrepreneurs that really understand the ins and outs of making products. They use it to print off or to CNC individual components of their product, or even the whole thing to see what it looks like when it all comes together. In reality, this doesn't get you any closer to production, right? All it does is give you an idea of what your prototype will look like. More often than not, these will not be functioning, just look-alike prototypes. There are other reasons to do this. Surely if you need to put together a pitch deck and you need pictures of your product, having a look-alike prototype will be very helpful. If you're going to launch a Kickstarter campaign or an Indiegogo campaign, oftentimes using pictures of look-alike prototypes is good enough, right? If you're doing a pre-launch on your own website, oftentimes that's good enough. You need the highest of the high end to make sure that that works. But it does work, and many of our customers use that process to get them closer. But just remember that using a prototype factory or a prototyping company usually is not what you need to do if all you have is an idea. You need to come to those types of companies with an idea, with design files, and then have them make it for you. All right, first, let's get to the tips. I've given you a little bit of background on what prototyping companies usually look like and what they can be used for. If you've decided that you do need to 3D print or CNC some of the components from your product, or even the whole thing, I want to give you 3 tips to make sure that you do this the right way. Number 1, maybe not China. Right? Getting your product 3D printed in China is probably not that much cheaper than going to a local place and figuring out how to do it, at a workshop, or find a friend that's an engineer and ask him if he knows where to 3D print, right? You're not looking for a perfectly, put together final product when you're doing this type of prototyping. What you're doing is making sure that things fit, and you're making sure that they look good. And if they do that, then it's good, right? So finding somebody local will probably not be much more expensive than doing this in China, and it will allow you to make sure that you can see the changes, right? If there's multiple iterations of the component and you want to get them back and forth and give your feedback, make a change, and then print it again. Obviously, logistics in the world right now is a bit of a mess. Going back and forth from China can be slow. Getting down to a local place can make things much quicker. All right, so tip number 1 was about time. Right? Tip number 2 is going to be about cost. Like I said in tip number 1, China is going to be cheaper. There's no question about it, right? Finding a prototyping company in China will ultimately be cheaper. If your concern is time, stick with tip number 1. If your concern is purely cost, then going with China, you are going to have lower costs overall, and you're going to be able to get more done for less amount of money. Keep that one simple. If you want to do prototyping quickly in China, not as quickly, but still quickly, then China is the place to go if you're looking for price. Number 1 was time. Number 2 is cost. Number 3 is quality. The best way to make sure that you're getting high quality components or the entire product prototyped, whether it be 3D printing or CNC, is to increase your odds, right? Prototyping this way is quite cheap. So why not use multiple people at the same time? You're saving on time by making sure that somebody does it right. You're saving on cost because you're getting it done quick, right? That's obviously a little bit ambiguous of a way to look at cost. But to me, my time is valuable. I don't want to work with one company, find out it's trash, work with another company, find out it's garbage, work with another company, find out that's a lot of time, right? That's a lot of time to be wasted. So the cost does stay down if you look at it from that perspective. But ultimately, tip number 3 is about if you do your prototype with 5 different component rapid prototype factories, you're going to be able to increase the odds that somebody's going to do it perfectly. You know, hell, do one at home, do one abroad, do one in a different country, right? Do a couple in China. I think increasing your odds of getting a good quality really is just the numbers game, unless you have the contacts up front. I'm assuming that you're looking from scratch, and if that's the case, increase your odds to increase the likelihood of having a quality product. So that's it. Tip number 1, remember, is time. Do it local. If you're in a rush, do it local. Tip number 2 is cost. China ultimately will be cheaper, right? Sure, the shipping can factor in, but even with that, it's still going to be cheaper. And number 3, increase the likelihood of having a quality prototype made by increasing the number of people that you initially start with. While the cost is low, I think you might as well, take that risk and start exploring, so you don't have to do that at a later date with more expensive companies. So there it is. Why you should first think if you really need a prototype company, and if you've decided on yes, 3 tips that I've given you to make sure that your prototype turns out great. We've written an article below about this exact topic, prototype companies in China, the ins and outs. Please take a look below. For now, have a good one.